Fear, it is the shadow in the room, the whisper in the dark, the invisible hand that turns our gaze away from the very thing we desire most. We like to believe we are rational creatures, driven by logic, by self-discipline, by the carefully curated choices we make. But the truth is far simpler and far more terrifying. We are all driven by fear, and for some, that fear does not manifest as a shaking hand or a pounding heart. No, it appears in a far more cunning disguise. It wears the mask of indifference, the air of detachment, the cold poise of someone who doesn't need love. But they do. They need it desperately. Yet they fear it more than anything else. Today, my dear listener, we are going to peel back the layers of this great paradox, the hidden fears that drive avoidant attachment, not to judge, not to condemn, but to understand. Because only when we see the fear for what it is, can we begin to set ourselves free. So sit with me for a moment. Let's take a journey. I promise you stories, wisdom, and a touch of wit. After all, matters of the heart, even the most tragic, should be handled with a bit of humor, don't you think? I once knew a man. Let's call him Henry. A brilliant mind, a scholar. A man who could recite entire passages of Shakespeare with a glass of brandy in one hand and a lifetime of solitude in the other. He was the kind of man people admired but never truly knew, and that suited him just fine. One evening, over the faint crackle of a fireplace and the weight of a silence that only the lonely truly understand, he told me something I will never forget. I don't let people in because I know how it ends. Love is like a storm, and I spent too long learning how to build a house that won't flood. You see, Henry, like many who walk the path of avoidance, wasn't born cold. He became cold. Somewhere in the depths of his past, there was once a boy who longed for warmth, for safety, for the quiet reassurance that love would stay. But love, as he knew it, was unpredictable. Perhaps a parent who was there, then gone. Perhaps affection that was given one day, withheld the next. And so, Henry built his fortress. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Because to need is to risk. To love is to open oneself to devastation. And for those who have learned, too young, too painfully, that closeness is dangerous, solitude becomes a sanctuary. But here's the irony, dear listener. The fortress does not protect. It imprisons. If you watch closely, you will see it. A flicker in the eyes, a pause before a response. The way their body stiffens, ever so slightly, when the conversation veers too close to something real. An avoidant does not run from you because they do not care. They run because something inside them, some old and wounded thing, is screaming, "Run first before you are left behind." You see, deep within every avoidant is the ghost of abandonment. Perhaps it was a parent who was present but emotionally absent. A love that was promised but never truly delivered. A betrayal that taught them the bitter lesson that attachment is a risk they are not willing to take. And so they learned the art of leaving first. Not in grand theatrical exits, mind you. No, that would be too obvious. They leave in small, unspoken ways. The way they delay responding to messages, the way they keep their world carefully compartmentalized, the way they make you feel wanted in fleeting moments, only to withdraw before you start believing in permanence. They are not cruel, they are not callous, they are simply afraid. Afraid of relying on someone who might not stay, afraid of needing someone who might not choose them tomorrow, afraid of giving in, only to be left in the ruins of another broken connection. So they choose safety over intimacy, distance over closeness, control over vulnerability, and all the while the ghost whispers, "You are safer alone." But here is the cruelest trick of them all. Avoidants do not just fear losing you. They fear that if they let you close enough, you will see them for who they really are. And worse, that you will leave because of it. I knew a woman once. Let's call her Eleanor. She was brilliant, sharp, a force of nature who could silence a room with nothing but a glance. And yet, beneath the cool exterior, she carried a fear so profound she could barely speak of it. One night, in a rare moment of openness, she confessed something that has haunted me ever since. I never let anyone see me completely, because if they did, they would realize I am not enough. That is the unspoken terror of the avoidant, that beneath the carefully crafted independence, the self-sufficiency, the walls built sky high, there is something deeply, unbearably unworthy, that if they truly let you in, you will see the cracks, and you will leave. So they keep you at arm's length, not because they do not want you, but because your nearness is a mirror they are not ready to face. Now, here is the tragedy. Avoidants do want love. They long for it in the quiet hours, in the spaces between conversations, in the stillness of a room that feels too empty after you have gone. They think of you, they miss you, but they will not always reach for you, because the moment they do, they are vulnerable, and vulnerability, true vulnerability, is the thing they have spent their whole life avoiding. But make no mistake, beneath the fear, beneath the retreat, beneath the walls that seem impenetrable, there is longing. And if you listen closely, if you watch for the signs, you will see it. In the way they remember the smallest details about you, in the way they linger just a second too long before saying goodbye, in the way their silence is not indifference, but hesitation. Because love, to them, is both a dream and a danger. And so they stand at the edge of it, longing to jump, terrified to fall. So, what does one do with an avoidant? The question I imagine many of you are asking. Do you chase them? Do you prove your love louder, stronger, more persistently? No. You understand them. You see the fear for what it is. Not a rejection, not a dismissal, but a survival mechanism they built long before they ever met you. You give them space, not as a punishment, but as a gift. You let them come to you in their own time, in their own way. And most of all, you never demand what they are not yet ready to give. Because here is the great paradox. The moment they feel they are not being forced to love is the moment they feel safe enough to try. So, dear listener, if you have loved an avoidant, or if you yourself have walked the path of detachment, know this. Fear may shape us, but it does not have to define us. Love is risk, yes, but it is also the only thing that makes the risk worthwhile. And even the most guarded of hearts, in the right hands, can learn to trust again. Now, if you have found some truth in this monologue, if you have glimpsed even a piece of yourself or someone you love in these words, then consider staying a while. Subscribe, share, reflect. And remember, even those who fear love want it still. It is simply a matter of finding the courage to step beyond the fear, one careful, hesitant step at a time. Until next time, my friends.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.